enough psychologists to handle the number of students that we have or the number of staff that we have, because what we're dealing with is now a clinical aspect in terms of the clinical psychology aspects and also the mental support. It is quite a great area that we have not explored fully. Because even one of my students has been creating a chat box for using artificial intelligence tools for COVID-19 support as the project. But even as we did the test, people don't even know what questions to ask and even how do we get the support and which kind of support should this facility offer. I hope I've answered the question satisfactorily, Prof.
No, thank you. It provided some insights, because we also find this a challenge, because as much as we're using the digital divide to forge ahead in education, the humanistic approach is so relevant and learners need to feel connected. And like I said, like you said, your student was trying to get, in their study, do something on this. But the idea is it's not always easy. For example, we've got a special ethical code of conduct. We are not allowing at any extent, certain experiments, etc., to be done on, in terms of our research. We are taking it to another level because of COVID, I guess. Maybe post-COVID, we'll have more time to adjust and find new paradigms of thinking. Thank you. Paul, over to you, sir.
Yes, Prof. Just a quick one. You have raised an issue of ethical clearance. In fact, that is one of the policies that we had to sit down and review. For instance, when students want to go for field work, those who are doing research, how will they deal with the questionnaire aspects? Some people who are doing the pilot studies in the field, especially the agriculturists, how do you know that physically what you have been doing previously, the supervisors go with them to the field, ensure that they have gone and seen, for example, the crops and such. So our department is now being tasked to develop tools to ensure that we can even be able to track the students on site. If the student goes on site, we can be able to track the mobile phone through the GPS and know that the student is there. That also raises a lot of ethical questions and a lot of technical issues that we cannot be able to.
Yes, it does, because with us now, because of our strict government regulations, we're not allowed. So we've made a unanimous decision to not have physical contact. So basically what happens is in humanities, and we don't allow, everything is done online. There will be no face-to-face contact with the respondent, or you will be in breach and thrown out of any master's, honors, or PhD program, because we've got protocols and we follow very strictly, and we try to, put things in place. Thank you so much. It was very interesting, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwangi, for presentation and comments from Dr. Simon, you have a question. Just you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Dr. Karanja, maybe you can share experience with your neighbors, Tanzania. That you mentioned that Zoom is not free. You need to pay for that. But I want to know from your experience in Kenya whether you have managed to have the homegrown digital platforms apart from the imported one from developed countries. Is there any digital platform you managed to develop in Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Simon, for the question. Zoom, as we know, it's free for the first 45 minutes, and most of our lessons are beyond 45 minutes. Now, even if the tool is free, the cost of communication, the cost of data is what I talked about, which goes to almost $7 per hour. Now, in Kenya, what we have done is that we have done a mixed grill. We have not made an attempt to do from first principles or to develop a solution from first principles. But what we have done is that we have taken the Big Blue Button, which is an existing open source solution, and integrated it to various tools. For example, many universities are now using Big Blue Button in their own as a plugin for Moodle, because Moodle is now more popular. However, the Kenya Education Network, which we call KENET, has a facility that is online that has big blue button, has the virtual labs, all integrated in one, and it's available to all universities. You just need to register with a .ac.ke account, which all our students have and all our staff have. So the moment you register, for example, I can be able to track in, my head of department can be able to see, if he wants to see the reports from the department, he can see the number of classes that the department has had, how long those classes has been. And of course, whatever you do in those sessions, it links up to YouTube. So all my classes now, the students, I can be able to copy the link and paste it. The students can be able to see the class or to visualize the class from YouTube. If I copy the link from the big blue button Kenneth platform, that is what we have done, so that Kenneth is able to provide for that. And actually, Kenneth usually does hosting for all university websites in Kenya, does the infrastructure for universities, like when you want to do optic fiber in the university, when you want to design your app, they offer free consultation because it's a semi-autonomous body which is from government. I hope I've answered the question, Dr. Simeon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Back to you, Dr. Paul.
Hello, you can hear me, please?
Now we can hear you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Mwangi, for the presentation. I think we are running with the time. Is there anyone who has a question or comments? Okay, those who don't have a mic flow, you can just unmute your microphone. Okay. Just I was saying that it was very, very important and insightful presentation from a colleague from Kenya, the learning experience, policy implementation, and the role of partners, and it is very, very, very important. As we are moving to the next presentation from Sudan. From Sudan, as the AU that has hosters, organizers, and just we have capacity building programs on the East African office. Engineer Yasen is online.
All right, so now, in the interest of time, and because I understand from Wanjira that the server may not come back within the time that we have, which is only 15 minutes. So in order to maximize on the use of the 15 minutes, we're thinking let's move to the next topic, which is really the subject of the next session when we meet. And that's to do with the e-portfolio. So this doesn't need the internet, so you can say this is our plan D. We're already on plan D. Or is it F? All right, so this is our plan F. But let's use our plan F to make use of the 15 minutes prior to lunch. I think lunch is at 1. Okay. Asai reminds me the lunch break is at 1. So we can go through what is an e-portfolio to understand about e-portfolios. And of course, we'll invite you to interrupt and discuss, ask questions as we go, so that it becomes more discussive and less of a lecture. Right, so the next session is going to be concerned now with creating an e-portfolio. And e-portfolios are ways of documenting information in a way that makes sense to us. Now, in today's world, we don't use business cards or brochures or pamphlets or catalogs the way we used to in the past. Even CVs are becoming a bit redundant. E-portfolios are the way to go, in part because of the distribution, you can say, benefits that it comes with. We can easily distribute an e-portfolio. The other thing is that we can easily upgrade and maintain an e-portfolio. It's very difficult to maintain. Even a CV is a challenge, but let's talk of a pamphlet or a brochure that you're giving out. So how can we then produce e-portfolios as professionals? So let's look at what an e-portfolio entails. Here's a definition for an e-portfolio. An e-portfolio, or let's say a portfolio, not even an e-portfolio, but a portfolio in principle was defined by Paulson and Paulson this way. A portfolio is the story of knowing about things, knowing about oneself, knowing an audience. Portfolios are an individual's own story of what they know and what they believe, and that they believe that they know it. So, in essence, if you create a portfolio, according to this definition, it must be targeted to an audience. It's not for you. The issue of the target audience comes into play. So you can have on yourself different types of portfolios because they target different demographics. This is one of the core things about a portfolio. All right? And it's a story. So oftentimes, when they say it's a story, they're trying to bring into play the issue of a timeline. That a portfolio is not an instance or a snapshot of time, really. It tries to show some sort of time context, some history that has evolved to where you are now. So it depends on the type of portfolio you're producing, but you have to consider the time scales and you have to consider the target audience if you want it to be a portfolio, especially a professional portfolio. So a portfolio is opinion backed by facts. Now, this comes to the core of why you're doing this. Oftentimes we make claims that I know this, I know that, I did this, I'm qualified there, I'm qualified here. So this one provides the evidence. The portfolio, for example, for a researcher may have links or backlinks to papers or journalistic papers, and in fact in the journals where they were published. So on a CV you may make the claim, but on a portfolio you will actually give a backlink, especially if it's an e-portfolio, so someone can see, oh, this is where it is. That kind of thing. So the evidence-driven claims or evidence-backed claims is really what we are talking about here. So this presentation is in session 3 in the system, but right now the system's down, so that's a redundant statement. So here portfolios provide evidence of what an individual knows as samples of their work. So this is one of the key issues behind making a portfolio or an e-portfolio. So what is an e-portfolio then? It tells a digital story. An e-portfolio or electronic portfolio is a collection of digital artifacts articulating learning, both formal and informal, experiences and achievements over time. It's a definition by Beetham in 2005. So what do we mean by digital artifacts? Essentially, it is the various components that make up what you see on an e-portfolio. So it can be text, it can be a body of text, but it can be images, it can be video, it can be animations, But it's up to you what you decide you want to show. But they're visual representations of the evidence of any claim that you're making. So text can be with images and in the form of, let's say, a paper or a book chapter or a book. You see, that document becomes what we call an artifact. So the idea is, in your e-portfolio, is to look at it as artifacts that you are collecting to showcase to your target audience. Always, your target audience are key. It's not just for anyone, usually it's for your targeted audience. So what is an artifact? Examples of that: papers, publications, books. Projects of significance. So what would constitute your project? You see, it could be a body of text, some photos, as well as some videos. Some of those videos are in the form of testimonials. But it's up to you how you decide you're going to, what artifacts you're choosing and how you're going to represent them. Evaluations from assignments or projects. So this can be reports. It can be some sort of, third-party document that verifies that your project claims are what they are. Recognitions and awards, like certifications. So your e-portfolio can provide evidence of that, whereas a CV may not necessarily. You have to attach them. But you can actually have recognitions and awards on a e-portfolio. Reflections and methods and pedagogies. So we talked about a timeline and we talked about stories. So when you're doing a portfolio, oftentimes you want to have a page which you devote to your story. How the information that you're showing emerged. For example, if it's a professional portfolio, you want to be able to talk about historically, I worked here and I produced all this. I worked in another place later on, let's say in 2005, I produced all this. 2010, I worked from 2010 to 12, I did all this. So you provide that sort of evidence, but you also want to back it with reflections, with methods, with pedagogies, with explanations that help people to understand what you're showing them. This is important to the people who are interested in your work, right? In other words, don't just put a picture there and people have to now interpret the picture. Yes, have a caption which is labeled and explains what this picture is in context of what you want to show them. Okay, so that kind of relevance is key. Stories or journal entries, we've discussed that. Photos, images, audio, and video clips. So audio is part of it. And a product, artwork, visualization, or any documented result. So when you produce a paper or you produce a book, this is a documented result. It's the end, it's a body of work, right? But you could also have something you've recorded, like a documentary, or it could be a short film that explains something. It could be a product you have made, an artwork, or even a visualization, some sort of chart or diagram. So these things also constitute part of your e-portfolio. In fact, they're quite useful. So you want to showcase them as well. All right? So these are the artifacts, and they're obviously digital in nature. So what does a portfolio contain? It contains your philosophy, goals, concepts, and ideas. And this is one of the things we need to understand, that when you produce a portfolio, whether it's professional, or it's for learning, or it's for teaching, or it's institutional, whether it's any of these, you need to have a philosophy that informs it. And anyone who reads it should have a sense of that philosophy. They should also have a sense of your goals, your concepts, and your ideas. They should have a sense of you in that context within which you're communicating. If they read it and they don't have this sense, then you have not really communicated. Yes, it's very targeted, and the issue of goals and philosophies, these are top level for the person who's looking at what you're showing them. It should have proof of concept. In other words, evidence backing your claims. So if you said I worked on a project, then the evidence should be provided. Sometimes in photos or videos which are captioned. Sometimes in explanations which wrap themselves around what you are showing. But this kind of relationship is key. So anything you show is driven by the fact that it is evidence of any claim that you are making. If you have a qualification, then of course you want to show the certification. Or if you're saying that you have publications you have produced, then you show the evidence by linking or showing the document. Artifacts, of course, we discussed that. Self-reflection and self-assessment for self-evaluation. Now, this one in particular is important for students. E-portfolios can be useful learning tools. They don't necessarily have to communicate anything else, but to a student, it can be a way of learning. In which case, self-reflection, self-assessment, and self-evaluation are key. Because as you record and document your learning path, you reach a point where you want to reflect over what has happened. And when you do this, you have new insights. And that helps you to make decisions going forward and make choices. So using it as a learning tool, this particular point on self-reflection and self-assessment is very important. So what do e-portfolios contain? Writing samples, we've discussed this one. Essays, publications, journals, photos, slideshows, videos, and multimedia interactive content. So I didn't discuss much about interactive content, but these days you can have interactive information like games or anything that requires, instant feedback. You click on a quiz, you make some choices, you send, and you get instant feedback. You can also include these kind of artifacts within your e-portfolio. Research projects and links to resumes, blogs, websites, or other online content, which is relevant. So why use it in the first place? To document and organize work, obviously. To reflect and espouse your thoughts, especially when you're using it as a learning portfolio. To showcase, to convey visual messages. Now, showcasing simply means you're displaying your evidence of your proof of concept. Everything that you're claiming. That's what we mean by showcasing. You're providing the proof of concept. To share and distribute work. So your target audience needs to receive it. And when they receive it, they may want to share it with others. So this issue of sharing is at the heart of why e-portfolios in particular are actually important. More than portfolios, which are offline. E-portfolios are very distributable. And then to assess work for purposes of assessing. So a teacher in particular, a lecturer, would be interested in using an e-portfolio for assessment. So students, for example, can compile their entire course according to milestones that were set during the course. And at the end, the lecturer can use those milestones, which are time-based, to assess the student's work. So using it as an assessment tool for lecturers is very useful. And some methods of assessment are actually mandating using an e-portfolio, like a project, for example. If a student is doing a project, then it makes sense to use an e-portfolio methodology for purposes of assessment. Okay? We have some examples. Now, unfortunately, because the system is down, it's not possible for us to... Let me see if we can view it from here. I'll click on the first one just to show you an example of an e-portfolio. If the internet is up, we'll get to see that. The internet's working. Okay, so this is an example. That's an example of an e-portfolio by a lecturer. Now, in this example, she's only used or limited herself to one type of artifact, which is text. But she has quite a lot of it. You can see the links. The links provide, you can argue, a different artifact, because you can go to other websites where you can see her papers, her conference proceedings, and different things she's developed as well. She has their Google sites have developed, storytelling, e-portfolios. So you can actually see a lot more of her work from here, but she's limited herself to only text in this one. But this is an example of an e-portfolio with text. It has enough documentations. This one here are downloads to PDFs. So you can also provide direct links for downloading. We'll see how to do this in the next session. So this is a lecture, and this is not bad. If you go to the top, you find she has different categories here. Workshop sessions, conferences, online videos she has over here. But again, even if you click on online videos, she provides the links to where you find these videos. So people have different styles. This is one style for podcasts and the rest, using links. Okay? So it gives some idea. One thing I would say is I don't see any reflections or any of that here on this example. She's very direct. But we can look at a different one. You have different styles. Just to show another one. These are teachers. This one in particular is a teacher of high school, I think. So she has an e-portfolio and makes use of images. So this is her home page. And she has a menu, which is like a table of contents. to access the other information. So we can see what she wants to showcase. This one, I think, is a slideshow. If I click on the buttons on the side, it shows us different things. There's a video there, more images there. So this approach is a bit different, but she has explanations to reinforce her work so that you can actually understand it a little bit better by reading around it. So it contrasts to the one we've just seen, and even if I click on research over here, it shows this, needs assessment, it shows that. Okay, so it's a different style. Okay, the idea is to have this as a way of targeting whoever you're targeting. Now, this is another one. We had 3. So this one, you can see, has chosen to have a home page without any image, but there is an extensive summary down here on what she wants to talk to her audience about. Okay, yeah, so this should make sense to her audience. She's got knockdown menus here, and about me, so she has something on her over here, and she's limited it to 1 photo, but the story is there. You can see a CV down there. Okay, it gives you an idea. The more serious you take the page, the more seriously you put it together, the more seriously your audience also takes you. Yeah, because you can imagine reading a page, even they've not even run a spell check, but they want you to read it. You know, things like that. Okay, so it gives you a sense, and she's got her titles. So this is acceptable. She's titled every page. She's also has subtitles to break sections in her work. Okay, but she doesn't have much by way of links. So in some ways, this is not ideal, because you need to provide evidence of things that you're saying you have done. Normally, they're provided through links or by just showing them here directly. I don't see much of that. All right, so there are strengths and weaknesses in these portfolios. So let's see the process, and this is what we're going to cover next. That's the time, huh? It was almost time.
Yes, you have time for questions.
Oh, yeah.
Then
okay.
We can pick up from here.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, 2 minutes.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, so Isaiah is reminding me that I need to start wrapping up. So let's look at how to design an e-portfolio. There are 4 stages. We have the title page. It's very key. You must have a title. A table of contents, which is usually in an e-portfolio the menu, the main menu that you use to browse. Information pages, that's where you put your content. And then you have your closing page, but essentially it's where you put your contacts. Okay, so that's just these 4 stages that are key and make up a good e-portfolio. All right? Okay, so the last one is the process, the development process. So we're saying we first of all define our goals and philosophies. This is what we do in the beginning. The second, we select now the artifacts that we want to use. So selection in itself can be a monster, especially when you have a lot of work. Okay, so selecting them, you need to give time to. Then design this display area. The display area is also key. And then you organize your artifacts into the containers within your display area where you want them to go. You do that. And finally, you package it for distribution. And this is usually facilitated by the software that you're using. Questions? Do we have questions on this? Anything you want to ask? Yes.
How do you get people to look at your e-portfolio? As soon as they write your name, search, it takes them there.
All right, so Kwame is asking, how do people get to find your e-portfolio? So we'll discuss it as we're actually creating it, but what we do, we have a place for keywords that the search engines use to find your work. So we ask you to put in the keywords. It's a process we call search engine optimization, so that your e-portfolio, which is a website, is optimized to search engines, and they can now use those keywords to find you and prioritize you. And your name can be one of the keywords. Yes. Yes, question. Yes.
Yeah, my question is the hosting for data.
Yeah.
That's the e-portfolio, and it has to do with Google. So if Google decides, say, I'm going to shut down in Africa, and there's no, how can we access the portfolio? And
let me see if I understood his question. So he seems to be asking about the issue of privacy. and even access to your information. Google right now is giving us 15 gigabytes for free to create these e-portfolios. But when they see a lot of usage, then they can decide that, oh, Africa has to start paying. So in order now for you to access, you have to pay a fee, and then suddenly Africans are locked out of these e-portfolios. So he's asking questions about these kind of sensitive issues to do with access and privacy. I don't know if my colleagues want to answer on this. Michael, I know you had some ideas on this.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, you begin with
the issues of privacy. You need to the declaration of that. There's certain things you will do and not do, and certain information you will access or not access. But when it comes to moving from your person to the institution, you need to get the institution. I mean, you need to get the institution to provide the bigger space for all of you to operate. So for now, people will even access your Gmail, I mean your Google site or your portfolio, but they will do that up to a certain limit. When you hit too much, certainly there will be privacy. This occurs across. It doesn't matter whether it is Europe or Africa, they will always give you 15 GB. After 15 GB of storage, you will need some sponsorship to get to the big picture.
Okay. These questions have come up often. And like someone said, there is no free lunch anywhere. It's something that if you want to use Google, you have to bear with. Your information, that is why they have, before you sign in, you have to agree to their contract, and the fact that they will be sharing some of your information with others. Okay? So, as much as Google is giving you all this for free, okay, they are also making money out of it. All your information is going there. That is why anytime we are facilitating workshops using these free resources, there is this caution about how to use it and use it effectively. If you are using it for teaching, how do you use it effectively for teaching? If you are using it for private activities, and there are some information that you don't want distributed out there, what do? There are some restrictions, restriction options that are offered to you, that when there are some of the things you can make public, and others you can keep it to only the people that you want them to have access to. So we have that. But coming to the question as if Google should decide to shut down access of Google Docs in Africa or everywhere, what happens to mine data with them? For that one, I don't have the answer. It's just that you can't access it if that should happen. But I can't foresee that happening now because there are a lot of legal issues involved, and we can sue Google if they should hold. Yes, here in Africa we don't have that courage of doing that. But if they should come up in Europe or in Americas or somewhere, European Union, sorry, is it Germany or one of the countries recently? France. Yes, sued France sued Google heavily.
They taxed them.
You see, and they taxed them heavily because they felt that they are making more money out of it. But you see, the safety net for us is that we are using it for educational purposes. Okay? So once you are using it for educational purposes, I don't think we should worry much about it. Though I'm not saying you shouldn't worry, but we are not worried much about it. We are using it to educate, we are using it to transfer knowledge. Yeah, so Wanjira may have something to add because she's in that space.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well.
the issue of, and this will always be real issues, we do have to be very cautious about what we put online as personal information. So those are some of the things we advise you. So if you don't want it outside, then don't put it. But if you think of the amount of information on the web, most of it, depending on how you craft it, you should be fairly secure. So don't put personal numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that when we design the e-portfolio. But one thing I want to remind you for the next time we meet, just like we saw with the limitations of what you can do. I mean, the mobile phone is wonderful. It helps us bypass many things.
Okay.
But when
So you remember that, then we can discuss in our meetings.
Try and come with a laptop. It doesn't work well. Google sites will not work well for creating, for the authoring part. When you
please attention, because she's making a very important point here.
Yeah, a tablet or a phone,
which I left
you can view it, but it will be very difficult for you to craft that. So if you don't have a laptop, maybe see if you can borrow one for that session. And then that way you'll at least be able to create the structure and then continue working afterwards. But for viewing it will be okay. It's just for the authoring. You will need to have a laptop.
Okay, these are good ideas and good, important information. I wanted to just add one thing, that one way of approaching these kind of problems, for example, what Mohammed has raised, is that it happened with academia.edu. Academia.edu is a journal. It was free, open source, until they put up a paywall. But the paywall really, and maybe some of us are familiar with this, the paywall now wants you to subscribe in order for you to even access your own. So Google can also put up a paywall. I mean, they're in business, so they can do it, and it's within their legal rights to do this kind of thing for you now to access. So what happens to the Africans who are depending so much on Google? My own personal attitude is that we're only using Google right now to learn. And once you learn, the skills we are teaching are fairly generic. We would want us to have an attitude of migrating to other open source, website creation tools. And once you have the basic skill and you see the fundamental advantage, keep learning until you settle on one that makes sense. Because if we were to all say we should all devote, I wouldn't come to sell you Google, because Google are here to make business. So let's keep keeping as Africans an attitude of learning all the time until we find that we can use this open source product with this other open source product and possibly even an African product, which now doesn't put us in a situation where we are held at ransom. I think this is how we do it. So at this moment we are disadvantaged, so we say, okay, we'll use whatever is there. But down the road we'll not forever be in that position. So once we have knowledge, we can now say we will choose to use the one that makes sense. So it is really a journey. Yeah. We want to go for lunch, I believe.
Yes. So want to say a very big thank you for coming to this session. We are going to continue from here when we meet again next week.
So today is the 6th day of the pedagogical leadership training, and that is the Western Hub training happening here at Alisa Hotel, hosted by the University of Ghana. And PEDAL is brought to you by PASGA. And those of us who don't know PASGA is Partnership for African Social and Governance Research. And we are still taking feedback and update from our facilitators and participants. And we are privileged to be speaking to Professor Sechi Dawson, and she is one of the facilitators for innovative assessment. And we want to have a few conversation and some take home from Professor Sechi Dawson. Prof, welcome to AU Television.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you.
Great. So, Prof, we met in Ibadan some few months ago, somewhere around May, and we took some update from you. And then from Ibadan, we went to Mombasa, and here finally we are in Accra, Ghana, doing the Western Hub training. What do you make of the journey so far?
So far, I can say that it's been an exciting journey as you see more and more people getting on board and getting very excited about the fact that they have been given a chance to learn and to improve upon their teaching and learning skills. And I think this is really innovative. This is something that must be cascaded right across, maybe let's talk about Ghana, right across all the universities in Ghana. And I'm happy to say that for this one, we have quite a number of universities from Ghana participating in addition to the University of Ghana. So it's been an exciting journey, and it's something that we didn't anticipate would have this amount of traction. Yeah.
So I enjoyed your session, and that is innovative assessment right from Ibadan and then in Accra as well. But then for the sake of our viewers who may not have gotten the opportunity to know or learn a bit about it, can you just give us a bit of maybe synopsis of your presentation?
Okay. The innovative assessment, basically our focus is more on what we call the formative assessment, where you are assessing students for their learning, to help them learn. And so formative assessment is not always about grading, it's not always about giving them marks, but it's about giving them constructive feedback. So that
paper, pencil, test,
not always, yes, it could be many ways, but it's not always paper, pencil. Assignments that you give them, questioning them in class, letting them make presentations in class, where you can give them a feedback to improve upon their learning. And that is where our emphasis is, because we are looking at how can we get our graduates to own their learning, to be more self-assertive and all of that. And part of the ways we can achieve that is also through the way we assess them. And we have actually noticed, when we start the program, we always realize that when we ask questions from lecturers about what assessments are, their mind quickly goes to grading tests. But by the end of the session, they have got their aha moments and realized, oh, really? So all the assignments that I give them, or asking them questions in class, or getting them to do group work in class, can be looked at innovatively, and I need to give them feedback. And that's one of the things that we are stressing, that we need to give them feedback. And the feedback is supposed to help them improve on their learning, so that by the time they come to the end of the course, and you even set the normal summative exam, they will do much better, because they would have had a chance to improve upon their learning. And so that's really what we are stressing in this session. Yeah.
So yesterday we had a bit of some interactive session with some of the participants. And one key thing that we picked out was that, in the university setting, mostly examinations or the grading system is 30 for classwork, 70 for examination. And so coming up with these new interventions and innovative ways of assessing students, their dilemma was the difficulty in just moving ahead to implement it without going through the quality assurance processes and the structure of the university. How do you think our participants would be readily able to implement some of these new strategies?
Again, I think when we look at the strategies and think about how policy is going to work on it, is because we are fixated on grading them.
Absolutely.
And using that as being able to let them say, this is the grade they've got, this is the class they've got, etc. But we are saying that with the innovative assessment, there are even things you can do in your classroom, little things which help the students to improve on their learning. So you teach them, for example, how to do peer assessments, such that between themselves they can help each other. When somebody does the work, you give it to another person. In fact, to give you a feedback. And one of the things that it happens, especially when you're dealing with graduate students, is where you actually for a cohort of graduate students, you can let them help each other. When they write their, let's say, introduction, 10 papers, they pass it among each other. But the thing is, you as a supervisor must give them some rubrics to help them assess each other. They improve upon it before they bring it back to you, the supervisor. So it even makes your work easier. And very simple. Exactly, and that does not need to go through any policy change, because it's not so much about grading them. You will do the grading eventually, but you would have got a much better work, which is what we are actually about. We are educating the students. We are not just giving them grades. We want them to be able to go out and perform. So if they are able to do this, even using peer assessment or even self-assessment, it makes them even also more self-assertive, more confident. So when they go out into the marketplace, to the workplace, they become more confident. They know how to rate people. They know how to talk when they go for interviews. They are more relaxed because they are used to speaking and assessing things and analyzing things. So far, we've been doing too much of it for them, and we need to get back to letting them be able to do some of these things for themselves. The other thing is this 60-70, 70-30, etc. The Nigerians said, as for them, their commission, the Nigerian Universities Commission or something, actually has said it should be 60-40 now. But for us, you see, the issue is when you're looking at the continuous assessment and then you're looking at the main exam, what are you putting in to be able to get them to do that? And sometimes for the main exam, it does not always have to be a sit down, especially for graduate students. You can give them a take-home exam, you can give them a term project, you can give them, and that can constitute their main exam. So especially for our graduate students, we need to move out of always just giving them the sit-down exam. They have to do other things. Yes, answer our questions. They need to do other things, be more involved in their learning. And I think some of those things we can work them out. So it's not the policy, but it's now the little strategies that you are using yourself as a lecturer to be able to gain that. So even for their 70%, a lot of us are quite reluctant to use multiple choice questions because we don't know how to set them. So that's also another thing that we have to organize something to do eventually. And they are very difficult to set. And you can set, in fact, somebody was telling me, you can use a whole case study to set multiple choice questions on a case study. And if you don't learn. Yes, yeah. And if you don't understand it, you will not get anything out of it. The only thing is that we have not asked them to write. And somebody said, again, if the objective, when we do our summative exams, what is the objective? To test their learning or to test their writing? We can test their writing during the semester, sometimes by the essays that we give them and all kinds of. So there are ways in which we can get around, especially when we have large numbers of students. There are ways to get around it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Before we let you go, we know not all the universities in Ghana are part of the training. Do you have plans as the host, University of Ghana, to maybe organize a conference where you bring all the universities in Ghana together and teach them some of these innovative things? Yeah,
there is also what is known as the cascading aspect of this. And we are hoping that when the time comes, we'll be able to involve more universities. And the idea is train people in universities and then let them also go and replicate. Right. So it's more of a replication thing. So we don't do it all from University of Ghana. But if you have a critical mass of people who have been trained, we can go ahead. And once you've got that excitement about, yes, this pedagogy thing, we need to build up our skills, etc., you can even look at it as a continuous professional development program. And people will be more willing to do that. So every long vac, and there are some universities who actually do that. I know GIMPA sometimes did something, Ashasi does some, where you have long vac, you organize a continuous development program for that. And University of Ghana, we also do that, but mainly for our new lecturers. But there are also plans to make sure that we bring it on board, continuous professional development programs, such that all lecturers will benefit from it. So one wouldn't say that you are an old lecturer or you're a professor, so you don't have that. I mean, the amount of the amount of information that I have got or have learned by participating in this is amazing. And I'm at the end of my service as a lecturer. However, I have gained so much and my students are benefiting from it. So as academics, we really never stop learning. So you can't say that I'm a professor, I'm a full professor, I'm this, therefore I don't need it. We do, all of us need it because we always learn new things. And if you can't even learn new things, you can impact to somebody else. So participating in it, giving out your ideas, it's a way of impacting the younger generation, and we need to do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Prof. We wish you all the best as well. Great. So we just had a brief interaction with Professor Stacey Dawson, and she is a facilitator for innovative assessment at the Pedagogical Leadership Training. We look forward to having more interviews. Relax, stay glued to your seat and enjoy the best from AUTV. My name is Christy Sam.